Well, I was about to do this stream and then someone called me and interrupted, and I wanted to make sure that because usually when I speak to them, it takes a few minutes, and I didn't know how long they wanted to talk or what it was about, so I decided to end it and then start up again. I am probably later on gonna have to go to the market and get some more water and some trash bags. But I'm alone for a little bit. I figured we do our usual Monday stream, even though it's roughly an hour later than I would have hoped for, but it is what it is. We try to just keep on pressing forward. So I said in the previous attempt at doing this that today was actually a fairly special day for me because it's the birthday of someone I really cared about, and I was like thinking about this day in the lead up to it and just how I would react to it. And I think it's an interesting phenomenon that, at least for me anyway, it's as though because of the fact that I think of this person every single day, um, it's as if their birthday is kind of it's not really more of a reminder, but just kind of a thing that just kind of comes and you're like, wow. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way to explain it. It's sort of where you would think a birthday would make you remember someone more, but because you constantly remember them, it's kind of just there. Like it's not some big trigger for depression or sadness, even if you are sad that they can't celebrate it. So I don't know. It's just one of those things I've struggled to put into words. But speaking of struggling to put into words, how's that for a transition? I want to talk a little bit about writing and just sort of why it's so damn difficult. And how it's a lot more complex than people I think give it credit for. I think a lot of times we watch and engage with stuff that people have made and we kind of just are very harsh or critical of it or enjoy it. We don't really put thought into, why does this work? Why doesn't this work? Um, for me, I've noticed a big problem seems to be length, where it's like if I'm writing a show and I don't get all the beats I want, let's say in an episode, I'm thinking, okay, well, I can develop this in another episode. Um, but then there will be something else that comes up that I want to do instead. So that original thing that I planned on developing gets pushed back, you know, even further, and then you might just forget about it altogether. Like I think it's interesting how I'll sometimes sit there with the whole five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10 different ideas of stuff I want to do with regard to like a series or a movie, right? Want to give this character development, show what they're feeling after, etc. Like there's a stated goal in terms of what kind of story beats you want there, right? But then when you get to the execution, it's like it just drags its heels. And I've even noticed that sometimes I dread, like I'll have no problem just writing a bunch of notes. Hey, I want to have this villain and they believe this and they have this power and their weakness is this and they think this and they connect to the story through this. But then when I actually have to sit there and put, I guess, pen to paper or keyboard to mouse or hand to keyboard, I should say, it starts becoming almost like a complete chore. And I don't know why that is. Like I've never understood that, because internally I know that this is something I'm gonna have to do if I want to actually make the story. Um, but I just can't will myself to fully complete. And you know what it is? It's that ideas are a lot easier to come up with than a good execution, at least in my mind. Like sometimes I'll just sit there and I'll just think of ideas for like two, three different shows, just like that. But when you actually have to sit there and start scripting out every episode, or having like an outline of what you want to see happen, it becomes a bit of a hassle. I'll put it that way. I remember I was like, all right, I'm gonna have this 20 episode season. And this 20 episode season, you're gonna have like maybe 8 or 9 protagonists. Because you if you have a, like, a lot of people talk about Just to give an example, I talked about Young Justice having too many characters after season one, but and even though the first season had a bunch of characters, it still had like a central focus on like 6 or 7 of them. Um, so having like a 20 episode season in and of itself with 7, 8, 9 protagonists really is not that big because that means everybody can get at least 2 episodes that are about them. But then when you start factoring in the antagonist and which ones do you want to see 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, then you start having it's kind of like if you have a pizza and you say, all right, here's my 8 protagonists, 9 protagonists, they're all going to get a slice. And then you're like, oh, wait a second, what about my um dozen or so or 10 or 11 villains that are all supposed to be like, what's the term they use? Monster of the week, antagonist of the week, like where you get them for one episode and they might come back later, but they're like the central threat for an episode and they bugger off. Um, then you start cutting the pizza. It goes from like 8 or 9 slices to like 15 or 16 little slices. So by the time you finally can like cram all the when you really think about it, you have probably it's interesting the more stuff and you're saying to yourself, okay, well, it seems like a lot of characters right now, but when we get to the second season, there's not going to be any new ones because we already introduced all the ones. But I noticed that like it's always starting something, like creating a whole mythos and show that to me is always the hardest part. Like just beginning, like episode 2 is infinitely easier to write than episode 1, or episode 30 is easier to write than episode 1. Like it's interesting just how like things as they get further and further along, in certain ways they get harder because you have to remember like certain story beats and what plots are left unresolved, whatever. But then as they continue on, they also get easier because you're more used to the universe or world that you've constructed. It's just a nice dichotomy. I don't know. There are a lot of series that just feel abrupt. Like there are a lot of shows or movies I watch where, well, not even really movies. I should just say shows where like you'll have a show that builds up something for 5, 6 seasons, whatever, and then it ends during, let's say, seventh, eighth, ninth, whatever. And it's like the rest of the show felt as if it was this thing that's going to keep going. And then when they got to that season, they were like, all right, this is it. Like they really had no clue that this would be the last one, just because everything else feels so um like it's taking its time, like it's just this naturally progressing thing. And then when you get to that last one, you're like, really, this is it? This is as far as we're gonna go? Seriously? Okay. I mean, I guess if you want me to give you an example, I kind of felt that way with the last Airbender, where it's like, okay, yeah, they beat the Fire Nation, and you spend some time in like each different of the 3 existing nations that are like still around, but we're not going to see what the reaction by the people that are part of this antagonistic nation are. We're not going to see if they go along with it. I mean, when I was a kid, I was satisfied, but just as someone broke that down for me, because I used to watch other people's videos talking about the ending of that show, um I was like, the central plot may have been finished, but there's easily enough story ideas there for a whole other season, and evidently they were correct because of all the tie-in and continuation novels that have come out since it ended. But it's interesting because like you would think most works you beat the main villain, right, or the villain, that's it. But with that show, because they made an entire nation a villain, you really could have had like a fourth season that just tried to wrap things up where it's all these different members that are like rebelling and like not go because I just had a hard time believing back when that came out, especially after watching people's reviews of it where it was like, oh yeah, they beat the head of state, and then all of the people are just going to go along with it, like, okay, now we'll be friendly with these other regions that we had previously hated and went to war with. But yeah, now we're all on good terms. I'm just saying, the more I thought about certain stuff, the more and like a lot of times people will tell you if you want more of something, you're like greedy and you don't want stuff to end. But really, I just want if a story's going to conclude for it to feel like climactic and not have any loose ends or I'm talking about like just kind of have like a certain finality to it. And really, I guess what drives me crazy is when you're looking at shows where they've got, let's say, hundreds of characters, right? And there's a bunch of different plot lines. We have, certain ones don't you don't really know much about their past, or and if they do resolve something with them, it's like it happened off screen. That kind of stuff makes me want to see it go on further. Like I've been very clear about the fact that I'm not really the biggest Naruto fan. I liked it, more so during part one, but like when it ended back when I was in I think 10th grade, like 2014, I was caught off guard because with all the different plots and characters that they could have developed or had developed to some extent, but I thought we're going to get more. It just felt like this series that could have gone on longer than it did for another year, for another 2 years. Um, and again, it's like that's really not me wanting something to just go on continuously and being so in love with it that it needs to stay indefinitely. But I do believe when you have these different series where there's loads and loads of characters with unique backstories, and your series in particular is very interested in showing those backstories and giving developments even to secondary ones. When you choose to wrap things up and there's certain ones that we don't know major stuff about them, it can feel like, yeah, this should have gone on longer. Like, yeah, your central conflict is done, but I'm not gonna act like I wouldn't have liked to have seen more of the world. And of course, something like that can be rectified with spin-offs, right? Because I was thinking, okay, well, after the main series ends, they can do a spin-off about someone else, and whatever questions we have there, that can be addressed by some other writer or artist with the consent of the original writer. But then instead of going backwards and just sort of explaining more stuff and possibly even giving us a good story in addition to that, we get this spinoff about his son, who I'm not crazy about. So um all I'm getting at is if you're gonna wrap something up or conclude a story, at least do it in a way where like the main conflict has been addressed. Most of the major story beats have been done. Because I mean, like, there's a lot of shows where there's just stuff that lingers and lingers, and sometimes that's due to cancellations. So I don't fault the writers for that because they didn't know that they weren't going to get another season. Um, but it can really like I guess what I don't like is the idea that as a viewer you invest so much time or enjoyment in a certain series and then it has like little pieces and nuggets of stuff that you never find out what happened or what occurred. Because some writers will hold on to things relating to a story forever. Like they just won't tell you what was in it, even if it's been 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. I don't know why they do it. Maybe some of them are hopeful that they can tell it, in some other medium or whatever. But that's awful to me because it's even crazier when you think about like, okay, this show's been off the air for 10 years. Can you just tell us what happened? No, okay. Yeah. I remember like I always have to explain to people what I meant when I said that that show had too many characters. Like there are plenty of series with a bunch of characters, but they have a core focus. When that show got to its second season, it went from the same like six or seven to just being all over the place. Um, and then and then I like I've told this story before, but when season three was coming out, I said, okay, you know what? Maybe I was harsh, right? Maybe three is going to be a course correction where they bring back the group that we cared about during season one, focus on them instead. They're not going to introduce anything else because they've already introduced everything they need. And then they proceeded to introduce even more damn characters that they, tried to give focus to us. And it just became this thing where it was like, how many times are you going to get invested in some group or some character, and then next season you barely see them, and then they're replaced by, and it was, the show was just, it was too, in my opinion, too ambitious for its own good. And I've never really quite seen a series like that where it's got a main cast for one season before it drops most of them to bring in more characters that it never really quite focuses on as much as that original core cast. Then the season after that, they introduce even more characters to, like, it just, the fourth one admittedly tried to course correct. It was like, oh, we're going to focus on the original 7 or 8 members from season one. But at that point, to me, it was just too little, too late. It's like you can't have a group of main characters for 20 episodes, ignore them for the next, what, 50, and then be like, all right, well, now we're bringing them. No, it was too late. Man, that show is, I'm telling you, I'll bring that show up just for examples of, like, of stuff I'm talking about, but it's really a tragedy, just how much I liked that show during the first season compared to the way I felt toward it after that. It's really sad. And that's why I said that with that show, it really demonstrated to me, probably more than any other cartoon I'd seen when I was a child, that characters could take a back seat to a story. And I'm of the belief that a story, you know, if you don't have characters that we actually care about or that you develop, it's nowhere near as good as you think it is. All this lore and mystery and background and all that crap. It's just not something I'm really that excited about. And maybe I'm crazy because that show has a lot of fans. I used to count myself among them, but it just became too much. I have noticed that there's a lot of different writers who keep using the time skip for their stories progression. So if they don't want to develop some, they just skip in time, and now suddenly, you know, the thing they wanted has happened. And I was really disappointed by this because, as I've explained before, time skips can work if, again, like, it's some time has passed, character still acts the same. Um, or if you skip time, but then you show us what happened during that time. So, like, I really want to bring this show up. I'm not going to bring the show, but there's a certain show where a character gets crippled during the, like, final battle of one of the seasons, and then during the next season, after they're all well and rested, you see what their recovery process was like. So, something like that at least acknowledges, yeah, that thing that was bugging them at the end of the previous season, that's done. But as far as, like, being a physical ailment, but it still is something that, weighs on their mind. And here we're going to show you, like, what happened to them while they were in this position. Like, that's written by someone who actually wants to show the effects this had. But if you're a lazy writer, you go, well, this person got crippled in the season finale, but season premiere, oh, they're fine. They can walk again. Maybe we'll give you, like, a little line of dialogue, whatever. So yeah, time skips, like, they're not inherently a bad thing, because, like, someone else said this, you can't spend every moment of a character's life with them unless you have some 1,000 episode show or something. Like, it's just not possible. But what drives me crazy is that you have examples where it's done right or correctly, and then you have others where it's awful. It's used as an excuse. Because I brought up the one from Endgame, like, a couple of times. I talked about, I even did a whole stream about it, where there's all this stuff with the main cast that happens off screen to where you could probably write a Google Doc page about all the little stuff that just occurs, you know, in that little time skip period, and how, it's really an attempt by, and it's so sad. Because the actors wanted out of their roles, like they wanted to just not be doing this anymore. It was an attempt by the writers to like wrap up, to like hastily in one movie wrap up multiple character arcs that have been running for like 7, 8, 9, 10 years, Again, in a situation like that, I don't know how much I can blame the writers. Because again, they're under the constraints of what actors want. So when you have to quickly get someone out of something, you don't have time to really develop it the way you want. But like I said, it's really depressing to think about when you have some character that you've like been with, that you've spent a lot of time with, and then all this major stuff happens to him, and you don't even get to see how it happened. Because I was talking about how you look at Iron Man, for example, right? And in that little time skip, which is 5 years, he gets married, he has a kid, um, they're living in some log cabin, you know, the wife knows how to use the arm, and you're like, this is all plenty of stuff that could be addressed in a separate movie or two movies. Like it's not a whole, but it's not like so much stuff to where you need like a new series to do it. But if they made not even, I said this before, if they made an Iron Man 4 that was set during that time skip period that addressed most of these things, which I think one movie could do by itself fine. Although if you wanted to, it could be two movies. Because like I said, 5 years is plenty enough time to make a whole trilogy take place over. Let's not forget the Raimi trilogy is in real life was 5 years. Um, man, I'm just thinking about like all this stuff happen. Like I don't know, maybe I'm just crazy, but I just keep thinking about how you spend we knew that character for 11 years, and then all the major resolutions to his arc, minus the one with his dad, take place off screen in one movie in the span of like 5 minutes. Oh, it's so rushed. And like I said, it didn't have to be. If they made and that's why, man, I like Robert Downey Jr. as much as anybody else, but he, because of him wanting out of his contract, he really did kind of mess up Iron Man's arc. I'm not talking about his arc reactor. I'm talking about his character arc, the one we've been on with him since 2008. Because that, if they did a fourth solo film for him, or even a fifth one, but like let's just say one movie, and it showed like how the rest of that stuff happened, it would we I would be so much more fine with like just him retire and never seeing him play character again. But I just felt a sense of like a lack and you know what it is? I think I explained before, but like when the first Iron Man came out, I was a kid. Um, and like I said, we didn't know the full extent of the MCU back then. We knew we were getting Iron Man 2 and Avengers, and that was pretty much it. But to have been following that series really since its inception, and to have the character who started it all be like, all right, I'm done, no more. And you have all this stuff that happens with him during this period that we don't even get to see. It just feels very abrupt. Um, I mean, it's that's why I said I wish we had received a fourth solo film, because I think that would have benefited his character a lot. But maybe I'm crazy. And that goes back to what I was saying about how when a story is continuous and ongoing, it feels like you're fine with it, right? Because you're enjoying the ride and the developments, whatever. And it's when you start getting to the end where things feel abrupt, like, wow, we were just we were just talking about this person celebrating 10 years of playing this character, and now uh, that's it for him. We're not going to see him play this character ever again, really. Because if I think about it, let's see, we had the first Iron Man, then the second one 2 years later, then Avengers, um, then the third Iron Man, then not Infinity War, then Age of Ultron, um, then Civil War, then Infinity War. Actually, no. It was Civil War, then Homecoming, then Infinity War, and then Endgame. And it's like before we got to Endgame, you really weren't remiss to think, yeah, he might keep playing this character beyond that point as well. Which is why I said that to me, it just felt really abrupt when Endgame came out and had the off-screen development. I don't know. It's just when like when I just think about stuff like that, it just gets kind of sad. Because I really don't think writing should ever be messed up because of an actor, like because of someone who plays a character, not wanting to come back or not wanting to do whatever. Like I just think those are two things that should never clash with each other. And that when they do, they often can make a story worse. Like I really think there's and maybe I'm crazy for saying this, but I really think there's an alternate timeline where um at least him and Evans were fine with still playing their characters, right? And then we got like more solo stuff with them. Um, because like I said, I just hate off-screen development, and I'm noticing it more and more in the stories, and especially in superhero stuff where there's these things that just happen that sound interesting off screen, and you never get to see what they were. I really don't like that. I was just thinking about it, and I said it's really interesting how they revealed in Shang-Chi, for example, that like Mandarin's actually a real thing that exists after that joke we had in the third film. And I was like, it would have been so cool if, again, alternate universe here, so not the one we live in, not the accursed timeline where every major character arc is resolved off screen. But it would have been really cool if like they actually did like Iron Man 4 during the time skip, like during that 5 year period. So it's like it would be like a prequel, and they have him fight the real Mandarin at last because that was something that people wanted. That was something that John Favreau had planned to be at the conclusion of his supposed Iron Man trilogy before he got sick of working on those after the debacle that Marvel put him under for when he was making the second movie. So it's really sad, because like I said, Iron Man has a whole bunch of villains that we didn't even get to see him face off against, like Crimson Dynamo, Titanium Man, MODOK. I still would love a movie where he fought MODOK and like he was making jokes about him being this giant head with little arms. No, I think that would be really cool. But there we go with those actors. And they're wanting to get out and do something different. I remember people were like, "Oh, Black Widow didn't do good because it's about a dead character." But I really believe if they actually got um, RDJ to like come back for just one movie, like just do some prequel film that's set during the time skip that just answers all that stuff that happened before Endgame. I really think that could make $1 billion easily. Like they could do it in 2 years, they could do it in 4 years. People still come and watch it because he's a very well liked, charismatic actor. To where people have said, after that the MCU feels like empty with his absence. So I really believe if he came back, even if it was just like a one and done final send off type of thing, you would see a lot of people satisfied with his return. Yeah, off-screen development's really interesting. I also forgot about Hulk. So Hulk's interesting in the sense that he gets one solo movie which people don't even watch anymore because he's played by a different actor. Then Universal decides to act stupid and screw with the rights or whatever. So Marvel legally couldn't make another movie for him. So he ends up having to have these little bit parts and other people's crap where he has to be there with five other heroes and never can really get the focus that he deserves. Um, just as a titular Marvel character has had his own book for decades. And what's crazy to me is that between Infinity War and Endgame, so like in that 5 year time skip, they resolved the story to where him and Hulk, Bruce and Hulk, I should say, merged into one with the Professor Hulk thing. And I'm like, because I had people who were like, oh, they don't like that he's that this happened. They don't like the story. But I said, well, even if you don't like it, they could easily do a Hulk prequel film again set during the time skip where I mean, 5 years, like I said before, is a long time. So they could have a whole movie where he's just trying to control himself, and they could do a separate one where he learns how to do that. And then, just they could easily make stuff where there's still that central conflict of these two different sides, like the Heckle and Jekyll thing, and then have the resolve with basically not Professor Hulk until the exact very end of it. But like I said, it just seems like such a major story element to have happen off screen. But I said the same thing about Hawkeye with Ronin, and like you lose your entire family and then you start going around being violent and murder. And it's like that idea sounds really cool. And it also sounds like something that if they ever gave Hawkeye his own damn movie, we could have, seen and been fascinated or interested with, because the idea that a person becomes less optimistic due to the passing of people they cared about is very realistic. And the idea that they use their powers or their abilities to go out and get those that they deem not worthy to be alive because the people that were worthy and were good are deceased is also something that I think is interesting. So that's why I said, man, so many good ideas, but the execution just doesn't give them the time they need to really, flourish. You know what I mean? Like, and it's even worse now because thanks to Renner's current accident and slash predicament, and I felt horrible about what happened to him because I've been hearing rumors that he may never walk again. It's scary. Well, we're probably never going to see this idea come to pass, unfortunately. I just always felt bad for Renner, just like as an actor in the MCU. Like he's been around since the first Thor, and he gets a cameo in that movie. He's brainwashed most of the first Avengers film. He's got a good, one of the reasons I like Age of Ultron a lot more than other people do is because of it's actually like the only movie that really focuses on him. So he gets some good focus in that movie. Then he's not in Infinity War at all, and then he's in Endgame, which again is about a whole bunch of other characters as well. So it still can't focus on him. Then he's in Hawkeye, which from what I've heard is more about Kate Bishop than him. So I don't know, just it just seems like for someone who's been in this universe for over 10 years, he just never could get the focus of really any of the other Avengers that were there. And that's sad. It's also kind of depressing when you think about it's the same thing with War Machine. Like um Don Cheadle has been in the MCU since what, the third movie, and they've never developed him at all. Like he's just the side guy that wears armor for Tony. It's really sad. And I remember like back when the second Iron Man came out and just thinking about how weird it was to have a different actor play Rhodey, because I did like Terrence Howard, but honestly, if Howard had, he must have had like a crystal ball or something and just seeing they weren't going to do anything with that character for 10 years, because he really didn't miss much. He can go pal around on Empire. That's just so sad to me. Like, how do you have a character who's in a series for 10 years? And somebody actually said this. Rhodey in the MCU and Hawkeye as well, but I probably would more so say Rhodey. But Rhodey in the MCU is basically what 1010 is in Naruto. Where there's like a character who's been there basically since the series started, and they just never get focused on throughout the whole thing. But in his, it's even worse here because it's like this is an actual actor who's like like when I think about it, he's in God, I don't even want to start listing off movies because I'll get even more depressed. But he's in at least 5 or 6 different movies, and they never focus on him. And they're talking about Armor Wars, but that still really isn't even about him. It's about, I guess, he's protecting Tony's armor. So that's why I said that, like, I know this is not what Marvel intended because they were talking about a War Machine solo film at one point. And we never, unfortunately, because a lot of times things don't go the way we want, we can only look at works as they are. So ignoring the fact that they planned on doing something and just never got around to it, and I guess now we're trying to rectify that, it still is really jarring that he's been in that universe again since the first film, but it's been the same actor since 2010. And here we are 13 years later, and they've never developed him. That's really sad. So yeah, Terrence Howard wasn't missing anything when he walked away. When I say anything, I'm not talking about like the movies themselves being bad. I'm talking about just that role, like that. It's so thankless and so little to do, and you might get a couple of good lines here or there, but as far as ever actually being a focus, nope. It's even worse because in the very limited screen time that Rhodey has across the like whole universe, there are certain things about him that are interesting, like being in the military. It's assumed that after he joined the Avengers at the end of Age of Ultron, he became close to Sam. So you would think during Endgame, after they have him survive the snap, they would have it to where he's like, "Hey, um, I became like me and this guy were friends and we got along, and just not being able to see him is it's crazy. It just happens. So, but nothing. There's really no lines or sense of reflection on his part at all. And it's like I said, I don't want to turn this into a race thing, but it's so sad that like you look at because for all intents and purposes, when you're talking about the MCU, War Machine is the first black superhero, and the first black super that they have has been there pretty much since it started and just has never been the focus in any of his appearances. God, it's so interesting to just think about like the early days of the MCU. Like I remember when they cast Heimdall, what was it, Idris Elba as Heimdall in Thor, and people were like, oh, he should be played by someone and then the movie came out and he's like barely in it, so nobody cared anymore. Because that was another thankless role where you just don't do anything. I don't know. I just it just seems like there's a lot of visually pleasing sights and areas in the MCU, and then like we never actually get to spend any time in them. I mean, you look at Asgard, it's a nice backdrop, but we don't really get to explore the cities or see much of the actual place before it gets destroyed in, Ragnarok. Kind of the same thing with Wakanda if you think about it. Like in the first film, we get to see the little ritual that they do, and there's some background shots of the people doing dances, and that repeats itself in the second one too. But we don't really get to see like what it is on a day-to-day basis to just be in town and interact with the population. But that goes back to something else I talked about, which is like, what's the point of having all these different locales if we never get to explore them or see them or be around them? And it's even worse because like if I do a show and I introduce a whole planet and you only are you're on the planet for like, let's say, um a few episodes, but it's like there's like a reason that the characters never really go out. They're just kind of doing their own thing. They don't have that goal in mind. But you got a whole movie that's set in a different country, and we really don't get to see any of it other than these, nice little backdrops. And I think that's crazy. Like a whole film takes place in some region you made up. And you would think like, oh man, we're gonna see some creativity. They can create their own locales and different places that people hang out with regard to where their areas are. But instead, we're just getting these little brief glimpses, and then you go back right back to the main, you know, CGI conflict. So I don't know. It just seems like it's such a waste of money to just make these sets and then not actually like show them off and come up with story based reasons to just kind of explore and look around. I guess I feel like that a lot with these different series that make their own locations. Like we just never get to see the areas that much, or just kind of take a peek behind the hood and be like, hey, let's go for a tour. Um, it's kind of funny. I remember that when Thor 3 came out, people were like, "There's no way they're going to get rid of Asgard. We haven't even really seen the area," and they did. Oh man, yeah, they love making sets that they don't do anything with. They just make something. It looks nice. You see it for 10 seconds. And I guess the thing with Wakanda kind of drives me crazy because, like, a lot of the discussion around that film was how cool it was to see this futuristic, highly advanced civilization for Black people or whatever. But you really don't actually see it. Again, brief glimpses, a couple of shots of like someone standing somewhere talking, but actually like in the country, just seeing the different areas and how people live. You don't really get that visual at all. So, like I said, what's the point of making a unique um, country or region if you're not going to actually explore it or show what it looks like? I don't know. Just seems pointless to me. But right? These writers will do what they do. They're making hundreds of millions, so they must be doing something right. Yeah, I remember. I even had this conversation with somebody else. I said, if you have a show, like, I guess you can have a certain number of characters, but it depends on the length of the show. Because if you're talking about a 40 minutes like just season of episodes, it's a lot easier to balance 8 characters, 9 characters, 10 characters, because that means all of them are going to get probably at least on average 8 or 10 minutes of screen time, and they're going to share it with other ones at various points. So like each one is mingling or interacting with somebody else. Because there are shows that have like cast of 8 or 9 characters, and then they're 40 minutes, right? So every episode, everyone gets some kind of focus, or at least multiple scenes. It never feels like they're like a bit play or anything. Um, but when you're talking about like a little 20-minute episode show, and you have 18, 19, 20 protagonists, no, I don't know what Greg Wiseman was thinking. I remember when I was having this conversation about how it's interesting that in comic books you'll get the same villains like showing up over and over again to mess with the hero, and then if they do a film, they'll like get rid of them after one movie. And how you actually have some people who support this idea of just like continuously shuffling to different villains under some misguided belief that having new ones automatically makes the story better, or is somehow automatically better than reusing an old one. And the sad thing is that like a lot of these non-comic readers that suck off these films, right? Um, don't understand that much of the reason that a lot of the antagonists are memorable is because of multiple things they've done to the hero over a course of time. For example, Joker didn't just show up one day and paralyze Batgirl and kill the second Robin. That happened gradually. That's why I said people are just they're always looking for some way to I don't know, that's why I said to me it just feels like they have these biases, and when you don't conform to their like if you try to do something that's not what they want without even knowing entirely what it is, they're like, no, no, no. It's like, damn, have some open-mindedness at least. Ironically enough, the same relative that I brought up at the start of the stream, one of the things they had told me was that I should, I guess, try to have some kind of, what's a good way of putting it, openness to other things. And I think that's something I have done. I had a person who I spoke to, just met them a few months ago, and they asked me if I wanted to go hiking with them. I said, sure. And that's certainly not something I would just do by myself, just for the hell of it. So there are plenty of things that I am open. Just another example is that I said before that like in the last several years, I've been watching more and more movies that I've never seen before, to where I have like whole list of films that I just want to watch. And sometimes I'll even rewatch a thing I haven't seen in years just to, see if I still like it or not. Um, or even just if I, just to like revisit it through the lens of, being an adult. Um, there's also more books I've tried to read or otherwise be interested in, some comics, some regular books. So I really do like the like I feel like I'm generally the same person I've always been, but if there's one thing that's a little bit different in terms of from 5 years ago, 6 years ago, it's that I'm more open-minded to like engaging with some show or something else I've never seen or read before. Um, I don't know, it's just I guess the way I look at it is whenever I see a bunch of praise levied at a work, especially just as an adult, for example, there's a curiosity of like, what do people see? And it's like, for example, I have not seen Avatar. people like it's making the first one highest grossing movie ever. Second one is I think the fifth or sixth highest grossing movie at this point. I know it beat out No Way Home, but my point is looking at how much those two are making, I at least want to see the first one just to see what attracted people. Why do so many people rush out to see this now that it's got a sequel that's coming out over a decade after the first film came out? I want to know what is causing people to like this. Um and again, it doesn't mean I'm gonna like it automatically. It doesn't mean I'm gonna dislike it, just to be a control. Because I said before, usually if I don't like something, I'm a lot less likely to even talk about it just in general, unless I'm using as an example of some writing thing. But what I'm getting at here is I try to engage with stuff, even things that wouldn't normally like just catch my interest just by happenstance. If I see some kind of accolade that it has that people are, that find like for example, I had no desire to see uh Top Gun Maverick. I hadn't seen the first one, but I was curious. I was like, why did a sequel to a movie that came out almost 40 years ago receive so much success in terms of positive reviews, making over $1 billion when only two movies from last year that made $1 billion outside of Avatar, which got released all the way at the end, so I don't even know if it counts. But I was like, I want to know just what exactly is all the fuss about. So I went and saw it, and I thought it was all right. Oh, don't start with that guy. I hope you're not referencing who I think you're referencing. You're late. Hey, well, Salad, you're late to this stream. It started 50 minutes ago. Where were you? Oh, what's that, Salad? There was a movie that came out the year before you were born that was rated R, and you didn't see it until you were an adult. Well, you're almost 20 years late. You're 19 years late. When should you have seen it? Uh, when should I have seen it? You're late, dude. You know damn well any person that's worth a damn or just a piss would be happy that they made something and somebody liked it. Like they wouldn't go, "Oh, well, you didn't read it when I first put it out, so forget you." It is ridiculous because, like, by nature of the fact that works of fiction, generally speaking, tend to last forever. Like, there's movies that came out 50 years ago, people are just now seeing because they didn't exist. 40 years ago, 30 years ago, and to like to for your position for towards someone liking what you like to be, oh, you saw this after I did, so you were not on time in seeing it. You're like, when was that? Like, it's weird. And remember, instead of answering when I was supposed to see this rated R film that came out before I was born, his response was to say that it wasn't worth arguing about, but then continue to respond to me anyway, and then bring up some crap with a coworker that was completely irrelevant to what we were talking about. Elitist gatekeepers usually do that. I gave the example. There's a show that ended almost 20 years ago, in 2000. I'm not gonna say what its name is, and it literally came out the year I was born, and I just saw it for the first. I've heard about it before, but whatever. I just saw it for the first time about 2 months ago, and when I spoke to people who liked the show and I said I've never seen this before, they were like, "Wow, I think you should check it out." They were happy that I liked what they liked. They didn't go, "Well, this ended when you were in preschool or kindergarten, and you should have checked out the episodes on a VHS tape." I mean, like they didn't do this weird stuff. So I know this is not a normal reaction by people. Yeah, it is elitist gatekeepers. You didn't see something when I saw it, so you're late to it. It's not worth arguing about. As I write my ninth sentence in response to what you said. Dude, imagine me going to like a book club and they're talking about some book that they just read that came out 10 years ago. And I'm like, yikes, you guys are pretty late on this book. And they're like, okay, well, when should we have first read this book that's for adults that came out when we were children? And like, this isn't worth discussing. This isn't worth arguing about. This isn't worth arguing about. And then I'm like, I point one of the people in there and I'm like, that's why you got into a conflict with your coworker. And they're like, what in the world are you talking about? It's just, it's weird. Oh my God. Hey, he and I tell you that during the stream, he actually brought up the Holocaust. I'm like, okay, don't tell me I'm taking something too seriously when you're bringing up a tragedy like that to make a point about. I don't even know what his point was, but it's like, what, like, how do you get to say someone is taking something too seriously, but you mentioned an incident like that, a human tragedy like that, you bring up, and you're gonna start talking about somebody else taking something too seriously. Same happens with games. I mean, that's a like, but it just seems so weird to me to be a fan of something and then get mad that another or be dismissive towards someone else just experiencing it for the first time when they couldn't have experienced it when it came out because they either didn't exist or they were a baby or whatever. Like it's just that's why I tell you that like online you meet some of the strangest people, you know? Because like there's certain stuff I don't like online, for example. Like I don't like when people review the same movie over and over again and say, "Oh my god, this is so great," because we've heard a million times. But generally speaking, I don't even say anything on those videos anyway, so they don't even know, and their fans are still gonna eat the garbage up anyway. But with these guys, they'll like if you just reading that stuff, he really thought he was making a point. That's pretty late. Just like I was gonna get the autobiography of Malcolm X, for example. I've never read it before, and it would be so funny if he's like, "You're late. This book came out over 50 years ago." It was like, "Yeah, but I didn't exist when it came out. So should I have time travel to 65 and like, I guess told him and Alex Haley that I would be, I would be reading it. That I want to read a new copy." I told you people are so dumb. Like they just say some of the like stupidest, weirdest, strangest things, you know? Their argumentation is poor. Their ability to just like engage in a civilized discussion is just non-existent. It's really sad when you just when you see how advanced technology is getting and how primitive people have become and how primitive they've always been, but just kind of like how the internet has accentuated that. Like it's sad that people can use keyboards, but they can't use their brains to say stuff that's not crazy, you know? That's really sad. We're getting worse as humans. Well, I told you before that the internet, played a really big role in the reason that like that romance stuff is the way it is now, where you have women who aren't even they're not rich, they're not famous, they're not actresses, they're not models, they're not they're not really known for anything in particular, and they're getting like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 guys trying to send them messages on these different websites. Because like I said, that stuff inflates their ego and makes it to where every guy that for the foreseeable future is interested in them is like a joke to them because they know they can just switch back between the other 10, 20, 30 guys. And Unfortunately, because you have a bunch of men who don't want to accept the fact that chicks at this point have become so rancid, just in terms of like wanting to even bother with them in the first place. They will go around and like tell you to acquiesce to this ridiculous and really unfulfilling system where everything is geared toward this person with the triangle. And if you don't have one of those, then you're pretty much supposed to just play patty cake and do whatever you can to appeal to these people, even if it gets to points of absurdity. So yeah, it's really sad. No, we're definitely getting worse. Let me see. Men dating is dead. Too many. And it's so sad that like I look online because I did the women's many many options video, and I really don't see anyone mentioning all like because we talked about external factors, right? There's certain stuff that you can't control. You can't make somebody like you. You can't make a woman not talk to 10, 15, 30 other guys. And no one wants to point out that a lot of these women are talking to dozens of other dudes. They never bring it up. They act like when you approach a woman, it's in a vacuum, and you're like the only guy that is saying anything to her, or maybe there's maybe like one or two other ones. No, there's literally dozens of other guys all trying to get the same woman. Told you, go on Instagram or Instagarbage as I call it, and look at any random chick you can find and see how many of her posts have 30 likes, 50 likes, 70 likes. And then you go in the comment section, all these guys with their tongues sticking out and their mouth open. And tell me about how crazy I am for thinking it's a waste of time. So they never acknowledge this. Even the ones that call themselves romance aficionados and they have all these answers and you need to do X, Y, and Z, they never acknowledge the external factors like that one. It goes completely over their head. They pretend it doesn't even exist. They never. You won't see them say one word. You think I'm kidding? You won't see these guys make one mention of all of the dudes that like it's really scary when you think about it. Like they would rather deny reality so they could keep like saying, you did something, whatever, than just accept the fact that yeah, you're gonna have your time wasted and there's not gonna be that much you can do about it. It's really sad to think about. This is that's his from yesterday. No, I drank that whole thing. I was trying to figure out which water was mine. If guys would stop thirsting all the time, the situation wouldn't be this bad. Told you, man. I've passed up so many instances where I saw some attractive women. Because it's gotten so awful to where even ones that you don't romantically like, you can. I'm not joking. Go up to a woman, say hello to her, and she thinks you want to be her boyfriend. I gave the example of how at the last job I worked, I asked this woman if I could have like a way to contact her, and she gave I got her email. And I was fine with that because I wasn't trying to have her number or whatever. Because I get where someone was like whatever. I understand people being more selective who they give the number to. And I ask her what are her hobbies, which is something when you're just trying to get to know someone, you ask them like what kind of stuff are they interested in. And she sends me some crazy message talking about traveling around the world with her boyfriend and his family for the hot. And I'm like, you have to be really, you must think I'm really stupid that I'm going to ask out someone I work with in a medium where they have proof of what I said to them. but that's why I tell you that like they don't think they just believe because of their overinflated egos that every single guy that says something to them has this grand ambition, plan, and scheme to try and become their boyfriend. And yeah, if men would leave them alone, things would change very quickly. You think if they woke up one day and they had no likes on their stuff, they wouldn't notice? It is a joke. Like I said, there's no reason in the world why a random woman that nobody ever heard of should have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 guys trying to talk to her. No reason at all. I told you I could have 100,000 subs, and I wouldn't have I would have there's a very strong chance I would have less than 5 women like trying to say something to me. But if a woman who has none of that goes and makes a social media profile, she can get a bunch of guys to say something to her if she takes a picture. That's ridiculous. And also, why does every female want to travel the world? I don't know, man. It's kind of funny. There was a this woman. She was from. I'm not gonna say what state she was from, but she, from the U.S., right? And she was like, "Oh, I want to have kids too at some point, but in 5 years, and I want to travel around before having them." And I'm like, "Travel where?" She's like, "How about Cambodia?" Like, "Oh, you mean that war torn country?" But I'm just saying that, like, what you just wrote reminded me of her because I was like, "You expect me to wait for you for 5 years?" And I'm not waiting that long for any woman. Sorry, because if you do that, they're gonna just think you're their slave and they can do whatever they want. But you expect me to wait multiple years for you to go on this world trip, which you really don't need to do. I don't know what is so essential about seeing random countries that you never cared about before. And then supposedly believe that you're going to do what I want. That's why I said that like they're weird, man. They want to travel the world. They want to be on. They want to complain about men asking them out, but then they go on these websites and they post all these pictures of themselves, um, and don't block the guys if they're so supposedly harassing and scary. It's all just to get attention and to do these surface level stupid things that don't mean anything. Like I already said, if I traveled anywhere, it would be to other states in the US because I want to see what other parts of America look like. But I have no desire to go to Syria or Iraq or any of like I don't need to go to these other countries. For what? What do they have over here that's over there that's not over here? Hey, let's not forget the passport pricks. If you get a passport, you can get a woman like it's nothing. It's like you wouldn't be watching my stuff if it was that easy. I refuse to believe that. Do they love traveling for some reason? And like it's even worse because and I did this on another show. I was like, they'll talk to guys who live in other countries who they have no intention. Yeah, women will swarm you. Yeah, I believe that. You might get swarmed by some locusts or some bees or some buzzards, or they're not. Dude, they literally start talking like it's the Twilight Zone. Like, yeah, just go to this other country, and then women will start swarming all around. So who believes that? But it's really funny because we had this discussion on one of my other streams. It was like you have women that will talk to guys that don't even live in the same country as them. Like they'll talk to them and ask them how they're doing and whatever. It's like it's such a waste of time on everybody's part because the woman is not the guy is probably not going to see the woman, and the woman is definitely not going to go see the guy. So that's why I said everything they do is just for attention. God, it's so sad. Like I seeing men reduced to this state is really pathetic, you know? Like I get that people think men should approach chicks because of the patriarch, even though, like I said, true feminists would agree that like chicks should also ask out men. But like seeing 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 guys logging on to dating websites and all talking to the same woman, you know, it's just pathetic, man. Because it's like they really have like tricked people into thinking that if again if you're of this gender, you're like of some higher existence, and you're not. Nowadays, the mentality is the same as in Western countries. Well, that's why I said going to these other regions isn't going to do anything except be a waste of money and time for me, and just further prove my point that this rancid nature of modern women has just spread across the globe. You know, so all it's going to do is just confirm, you know, what we've already said here. That's why I said the whole thing is just really sad to me, because you do have men that actually wanted to have a partner and wanted someone they could work with and enjoy the company of, and you unfortunately, because of how screwed up a lot of women have become, it's just not a thing a lot of us are going to experience. I am Turkish and live in Switzerland. People told me that women are different in both of these countries. It's simply not true. Well, that's why I never believed it, because when I was online, and I've never really put much stock into like, oh, this one was from here, this one was from here. But like I've had run-ins with women that were from other regions. There was one in Trinidad, for example. There was another one in Australia who did something really awful. My point is that I've had enough bad experiences with them across the globe to where I don't want to bother with them anymore. And it's really sad to like after, you know, because I never believed in like the different country means something different type of thing. That never was something I subscribed to. Especially when we know that whatever country they're in, they're next to that beautiful world wide web that's going to tell them all the stupid and crazy things that their, you know, counterparts do in these other regions. But it was so sad that like no matter what variation of them you were hoping you would get, it was the same old crap. Like the ones in the US are no different from the ones in Russia or Germany or Turkey or Argentina. Like it's the same old changing your mind every 5 seconds, talking to 10, 20, 30, 40 different men, wasting everybody's time, women that we've been seeing on repeat since like 2014 or 15. So like I'm tempted to just make a video about like this foreign woman myth, the idea that there's something out there that's different from what we're seeing in the US. Or I mean, I can't tell you how many times I see people like Western women. It's like there's no difference. There is none. It's the same old crap. The only difference maybe might be what language they speak, but they're all saying the same thing. Saying and doing the same thing, rather, I should say. It's just sad, man. I don't enjoy like feeling this way, but it's the truth. And you'll have people that'll get mad at me and they'll call me out of my name, but I'm not about to sit here and act like I'm fine with the way chicks are. Yeah, if people want to get mad, then let them get mad. I don't. I tell you, I've been alone by myself for too long to even care at this point, like what the perception is. You'd have to travel to some remote village to find a girl that has no idea that the internet exists. Maybe then you get lucky. Well, sure, but then you also run into the same problem, which is how much is it going to cost to go to this remote village? Is she going to want to come back with you to wherever you're from? So even if you meet someone who's got like the personality that you think you might like or that is not as warped as some of the ones that are online, when you think about the cost and the different factors of like what she intends to do or what she's willing to go along with, are you really that lucky? Because like I said, um, if I have to travel to another country and spend $1,000, $2,000 to go on some world tour to meet a woman, how am I benefited by that? Especially if you turn up with nothing, because like that's why I said that like these guys don't think this stuff out. They just think, oh, just travel over here and their magic woman shows up. Let me see if I can do it. They just click their heels and then the magic lady appears and she's so great and amazing. Damn, Akatsuki Merchant, you're later than I was to my own stream. I was supposed to stream at 10. Didn't start until 11. So he was like, you want to be an hour late? I'll be an hour late too. Oh, hey, what did that guy say? Uh, Yikes, that's pretty late. You know what it was? Akatsuki Merchant was over there trying to write his Killmonger spinoff, his favorite movie villain ever. He's like, I'm gonna show you what Wakanda would look like if the bad guy won, the actual good guy won. And while he's sitting there, he's got his little purple drink and his 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 what's that one little that one I'm trying to remember what that thing was, a little spear. I was writing, but I wasn't writing Killmonger. Oh, I'm sorry. To us, he's Killmonger. To you, he's Eric. You're gonna give him a whole prequel movie, show us what he was doing in the military and what his relationship with his mother was like after his father's passing and the revenge path that he took and how he met Claw and the rest of that. He's gonna be the first main villain in the MCU to get their own solo film. Hey, look, I know you're sitting there with your spear and your purple drink and your vibranium chair. It was so funny that like I remember when I went to go see because I saw Wakanda Forever like on the those like Thursday preview showings, and I thought it was so funny that they had I wish I could take a picture of this. The chairs were all purple and they had the little like panther prints on them. Um, and I saw it in 3D. It was really cool because I like it when theaters are designed for one movie in particular and they make it look like the film, a bit. No, I like little aesthetic stuff like that where they make the theater just feels like it's for this specific movie, and it is. That was because it was an IMAX or I guess 3D whatever. So it was nice to see the place look that way. It's just something that you don't really get when you watch something on like a computer or TV. Like that theater experience. So what's the writing talk? Well, before Salad came here and awoke into my inner frustrations with. I mean, it's not even inner. We already know how I feel about chicks, but we were. I was just talking about certain writing tropes and things that were. You could replay the stream later, but it was me just talking about writing for like a whole hour. What parts I think are hard, what parts I think are easy, what parts I think are underused. Like somebody who have a really good idea and then just kind of like falls short in terms of actually showing it to us. Now, off-screen development is this trend I'm noticing more and more with stuff that's getting on my nerves because they're using it as a way to write a result without showing or explaining it. But yeah, I feel very bad for Banana Merchant. He's probably gonna have to be a vibranium merchant after his Killmonger spinoff film gets picked up by Marvel. I tell you, I'll never forget that one review somebody made. But God, I hate off-screen development. It's so lazy. Well, that's why I brought up Endgame because out of any movie I've ever seen, and I feel like I've seen enough to make an assessment like this, I've never quite seen the amount of off-screen development that took place there. Like, you can go through pretty much every major character in that film, and there's something big that happened with them that we didn't get to see. Gotta head out, guys. Have a great day, and thanks for these streams. I occasionally put them in the background while I work. Really helps. Oh well, I appreciate your attendance. Akatsuki Merchant. You might have forgotten this because it wasn't like a major. I'm not. I hope you understand. I'm not saying to insult you. It just wasn't a major detail of the movie. But for Endgame, both T'Challa and Shuri got wiped away. So their mother was like, I guess, the matriarchal figurehead of the country. And I didn't say this earlier, but I was thinking like that would have been a really interesting idea for a movie or even like a show on like Disney Plus or something where it's like the country of Wakanda without its leaders or most of its like royal family for 5 years. Like there's no successive figures and it's just the queen and they have to protect her because if she gets taken out, it's like it'll lead to chaos or whatever. I was just thinking that that would have been a really interesting premise because we know that the main guard Okoye is still around because she's in the movie, and Baku is still around. I'm like, why did they leave them around just to barely use them or to just have this really interesting story idea going on in the background and go completely unseen or unheard of? That would have been interesting because Wakanda has always been matriarchal in a way. Dude, imagine if the queen, because Angela Bassett is like amazing, and she has like those muscular arms. Imagine if she became the new Black Panther, and it's like this older Panther who's like just angry and like keeping this throne until the day that her kids come back. She refuses to believe that they're gone, or she even communicates with them. Well, nah, never mind, because that would have to like set up like I was gonna say they could have her communicate with T'Challa in the ancestral plane, but then Shuri wouldn't be there because she hadn't become Black Panther yet. All I'm getting at is there's a lot of stuff that happens in that 5 years that just by itself could be a whole movie. Like just like if you look at the Wakanda related stuff that happens during the blip or the snap, whatever term you want to use. I call it the snap because blip is goofy to me. You have M'Baku there with his people. You have the generals. You got the mother. You have T'Challa's girlfriend Nakia, who ends up getting pregnant, having some kid in some other country. And I'm like, you could tell a really interesting tale of some like villain coming there while T'Challa's like been wiped out, and then they have to defend their country without Black Panther. Because that and yeah, that's kind of a little bit what Wakanda Forever was, but to an extent not really because if you think about it, the in that film, they don't really acknowledge what happened during the snap. Like Shuri doesn't talk about, oh, I'm 5 years, I had these friends and now they're grown. Nothing. It's just you kind of could be forgiven for thinking that there was no times like there was no snap. Like you could almost say that the movie takes place in like an alternate continuity or something after the first one. Oh man. Like I know you're not into Black Panther as much as some other people are, but I really like the concepts and ideas of that series. Like the idea that there's this closed off futuristic world of black people, and sometimes they have conflicts with each other, and sometimes other regions try to like get something that they have or come in there, whatever. All of it just sounds really cool on paper, but there's a lot of stuff in the execution that people critique that I agree with. Like when someone said, how do you have this futuristic uh technological society, but then they're fighting in loincloths in tribal ritual, you know what I mean? Like stuff like that, I think those are legitimate critiques or questions to be raised. You know, and they don't even, and like it would be way cooler if during the films they actually made like a point of like the old traditions being like outdated compared with new stuff, but they never really go in that area. By the way, Akatsuki Merchant, I'm just going to warn you, if you ever make a movie, if you ever try to write something, it could be a show, it could be a movie, it's going to flop like Black Panther 2. If you ever try, and you know what, you can get mad at me, I don't care, you can unsubscribe. If you ever try to write something or make something, it's going to flop like Black Panther 2. It's only going to make 800 million. You're going to flop like Black Panther 2. You're only going to make 800 million and be the sixth highest grossing film of the year. Dude, watching those channels try to spin this movie as having failed is so funny. I'm like, I wish I flopped and only made 800 million. That would be nice. Oh my god. So Akatsuki Merchant, whatever script you're planning on writing, you better hang it up because we already know it's gonna flop like Black Panther 2. So it's time for you to turn in your writing credentials and hang up your pen and uninstall Google Docs or never log in there again. There's no chance for you. You're only going to make 800 million. There's no path forward. I still can't believe like they actually look at a movie that made that much and they're like, this was unsuccessful. Like according to what metric? I don't know that series like the MCU has like a thing about ending everything at 3 movies with the exception of Thor, but a series of like this mantle and this whole country that really could be its own thing. Like honestly, part of me hopes at some point, whether it's in the next 20 years or 30 years, I think it'd probably be in the next 20 years because I don't see the MCU going on, you know, just over like you know what I'm talking about. I think it'll be sooner than we think, but I hope at some point when they eventually reboot all this stuff, they just let Black Panther be its own thing. Or maybe if it's in the Marvel universe, it's like earlier on than phase 3. Because it would have been really cool to see like, you know, Tony interact with Shuri, for example, because they're both in Infinity War, but he's off Earth. I tell you, man, there are so many good story ideas that just completely get wasted or not like actually put into fruition at all. Like you've got 5 years of this country not having its actual king or the superhero identity that king was. And we still, after the sequel, don't really know what happened in that period at all. And I hate that because I just think it'll be so interesting to see what happened, you know? But that's why I said that like the snap is such a frustrating story device because it leads into things that can be interesting, but they're just not used anywhere near to the extent that I would like. I mean, imagine if in real life for 5 years, people you cared about just suddenly vanished, like they were just gone. And then they come back after 5 years, like people change in that amount of time. Well, some don't like yours truly, but you get the idea. Dude, that would be such a compelling trilogy of like just any it could be with any superhero. They have somebody that they love that gets like snapped away at the start of like a first film. And then the first movie is like them being in denial and then eventually accepted. Second one is like them doing other stuff and still kind of like just missing that person. And then the third one is like them having seemingly finally moved on, but still like missing them and then being reunited with them. I'm just saying this the snap is such an interesting story idea that you just don't see anything from it at all. And look, I know Akatsuki Merchant, you're not writing anything anymore because you're over there drinking that purple drink again. That good old that herb juice. So I'm not even gonna bother trying to ask you any more questions because I already know your focus has been completely taken over by somebody else. We already know that you're too preoccupied writing your Killmonger spinoff. It's funny watching people pretend the movie did so bad in the box office. It's a big cope. Yeah, and man, it's like imagine having a film that you spend like let's say 200 million to make, right? And maybe there's another 200 million to promote it. But then it makes over 800 million. So I don't know like how you can even because even if you want to say like, oh, it was not as positively received as the first one. Well, yeah, but a lot of people say the first one isn't even that great. So it's kind of like saying the sequel to the movie that you already didn't like, but that made over $1 billion is able to make almost 900 million without the lead actor. And that somehow is like a fail of the movie, even though it had everything going against it. Because remember, Akatsuki Merchant, they had to rewrite the whole film after Bozeman passed away. So there was a lot of stuff riding against that movie. And I just wish people would stop being so I don't know, just what's a good word for it? Like so open to finding a way to say something did not work or was unsuccessful just because they don't like it. I told you all those outrage channels, man, they're awful. Like they just sit there and they're like, this movie failed, it flopped. Like, according to what? Where are you getting this from? I remember people being mad that they reveal in the like with the post credit scene reveal, and I'm like, I mean, giving him that allows them to have your male version of this character that you want so badly, which that's why they have the whole recast movement at some later point. This movie failed, according to what? Because I say so. I do hope you agree with me that like even if I have a problem with the films themselves, the idea of them is like really cool to me. You know, like this this country that's technologically advanced and they have their own stuff that others try to steal or whatever. And it's got this long line of previous people that have been, the Black Panther. I just think that stuff is interesting. Hey, the other way to make these people mad is to say you like the second one, you like Wakanda Forever more than the first one. They'll lose their minds. Even though I said before, I like the second one more just because it doesn't feel like a traditional superhero movie. Like it has what's the way of putting it? It's got toned down humor compared to a lot of the other recent Marvel stuff. It actually tries to take itself seriously a little bit. Um, and because of its main star not being there, which is unfortunate because of the real life circumstances, but that makes it to where the movie really kind of is it's sort of an ensemble cast. It's not really exclusively about one character. I think you know what I'm talking about. Like because it does things that are a little bit different from what we've been getting. I really like it. So I know I've said something very controversial, and I'll probably have everyone unsubscribe because. But I said it. I'm just telling the truth. Like I thought the first one was all right. The second one I like more because it's not the same old stuff that we usually see. And I have my problems with it, but I think to say that it's a failure is really insane when you consider all the stuff that it had running against it. I mean, could you make a movie that's a sequel to a film that made $1 billion that doesn't have its lead actor? Dude, people lose their minds when I tell them I like GT better than Z and Super. I mean, I don't agree with the well, I don't like GT or Super at like just in general. Like I don't like either one of them. Um, but whatever. Isn't it sad that people will get so triggered over like someone liking something more than something else? Like, hey, I like all three of these shows, but I like this one more. You know what I mean? Like it's weird. I mean, I already told you my biggest problems with GT are just like the lack of focus on most of the other cast. And a lot of the ideas, again, are really cool, but the execution is just like whatever to me. Like you do an arc where you bring back all the previous villains pretty much, and it basically amounts to a bunch of cameos. They get killed in like one shot, and an android that was in one arc coming back, fusing with another version of himself, and then sitting in this corner, blasting at various people like flies. It just while he's under the control of somebody else. Like the show has some merits, but in general, my biggest problems with it are a lack of use of most of the cast and ideas that I don't think they use to the extent that they should have. So if you ask me which show I'd rather we rewatch between GT or Super, it would be GT because GT is shorter. It doesn't take two movies I've already seen and stretch them out and make them uglier. So um I would pick GT as far as like a show I'd rather watch the whole thing of as opposed to Super, but I still that still is like not saying much. By the way, I actually read the last like two chapters of the Super manga and I was surprised. Like, man, they're finally doing something different. I don't even like I could care less about Goten and present Trunks like future Trunks. But if that's who they want to focus on, I'm fine with it because You get tired of seeing the same two characters, and you know which two I'm talking about over and over and over and over and over and over. And you got this big giant universe. That's crazy. So I really like the last two chapters. I hope they keep this up. Knowing them, they're going to go back to the same old routine later, sooner than later. But I can hope. People also lose their minds, Akatsuki Merchant, when you say when you I'm talking about you when you said you liked Killmonger more than T'Challa. I mean that was blasphemy to a lot of people. They were gonna put you on trial in the Wakanda court. No, you attracted a lot of heat for that one. I remember this one person did a review where they said that when Nakia shows up in Wakanda Forever, they forgot who she was. Like they have to rewatch the first movie to be reminded of why she was important. I was like, that's kind of true because after the first film, she just disappears. Like all the other major people from Wakanda are in Infinity War Endgame, and it's kind of like just her who just vanishes. So, and then she shows up in the second one like an hour into the movie. So you've already seen like, which I still think that's crazy. I'm noticing another thing where like as films are getting longer, it's taking them longer to like introduce what are supposed to be key characters in their narrative. That's why I said Wakanda Forever is so interesting to me because it's like it doesn't really have a lead character. Like it starts off and it feels like it's about the Queen, Shuri, and Okoye. Then it introduces, Riri, who is the worst part of the movie in my opinion, but whatever. Then it's I'm talking about. Like it just because of the unique circumstances it was made under and the retooling of the script, it feels more like a team film than just here's this one guy that it's about. I don't know, maybe I'm not saying it correctly, but that was something I really thought was interesting about it. Just it feels like it's kind of just letting everyone sort of get the protagonist role for a piece of it. Remember, Akatsuki Merchant, I have a problem with different opinions. So your comments about liking GT better than Z will probably be deleted in the next 10 seconds. I'm telling you, they get on my nerves with that. They act like, because I said before, usually, unless you say something I just think is crazy, like just ridiculous, I'm probably not going to get upset over it. It's just like, because there have been a couple instances where like somebody will say, "Oh, I'm glad they didn't make this." It's like, can you get out of here? Like it's just, I don't know. It just, I feel like I'm more inclined to get upset if you're just like opposed to something we know nothing about than something you actually could have seen. Like if they say, "Oh, they want to do a Thor 5," and you're like, "They shouldn't do." It's like, well, I mean, you don't even know what this is about. Or they say they want to do Doctor Strange 3 with Sam Raimi coming back. They shouldn't do. It's like, but this movie made almost $1 billion, 900 million. You think they're not going to do a sequel to it? Really? Because you say so? I don't know. People just always are ready to swat something away. Hey, Akatsuki Merchant, you're lucky that I don't know what you look like because I really would draw a picture of you like sitting at your desk with your little Killmonger Funko Pop, and he had like a Marvel Legends toy too, and then like you got your purple drink and the Black Panther like head like mask, like right on the side of the other part of the death, just typing out your script for Black Panther 3, and you subtitle it um Return of Killmonger, so like he's now the titular character. No, seeing Michael B. Jordan again, that would be funny. Like just as like an actual real role where he's like returned. He's like, you didn't do what I wanted you to, so I thought I'd show you how revenge is really done. He goes tries to go after Namor. That would be, that I just thought about like imagine a third movie where they bring Killmonger back and he's got like this weird sense of family and he wants to like get revenge on Namor for killing his like that would be, and then it's like half of Wakanda with the Talokans or whatever Talokans, how you pronounce it, versus the other half of Wakanda that's like sided with like that would be really interesting. And then it's like a parallel to like different conflicts where there's been less members on one side with less advanced technology, but they're still able to fight back effectively. That'd be really interesting. So I said, man, this this whole like thing of that series could go on for a long time if they wanted to. They could make like 6 of those easily. It's just for some reason it took them 4 years to make the second one. So my hope is that we'll get the next one in like 3 years or less. But they're talking about doing a break and recharging, so we'll probably end up having to wait 4 years again or longer. It's like, oh man. It wouldn't be so bad. Like with Doctor Strange, we didn't get a sequel until last year, but it wasn't as bad because we still saw him in other stuff. Kotsky Merchant dropped that banger and then he left. He said he likes GT more than Z, and then he ran to the Dodge. We're gonna make sure that the Killmonger spinoff happens. We have all our scripts in a row. Like this guy went on a whole tirade against me and then started spreading a lie. Oh, start spreading a lie that I was slandering Goku. I don't know how you slander a fictional character, but imagine you got to go to Dragon Ball court and and like you're being prosecuted. Hey, what did you think of that idea where like for the third one they bring Killmonger back and then it's like half of Wakanda tries like sides with him about getting revenge on Namor for killing the queen, and then it's the Talokans and Wakanda versus Wakanda, like it would like half and half. Because everybody keeps saying the third movie's gonna have Doctor Doom as the villain, even though he hasn't been introduced yet. We're not gonna let you get away with slandering Goku like that. Ugh. Yeah, I had to crack my neck. After the stream, I'll probably end up going to the market and getting some water and some bags. And after that, I'll probably come back and relax. Oh man. I really wish I could figure out why every time somebody makes a good series or whatever, it's just when it comes to like ending it, it always just feels so abrupt. Like there's always something about the conclusion where I'm like, that's it, really? Okay. But he should go on a tirade against you because you can't sit here and slander iconic fictional characters and think you can get away with it. Even though we get to slander real life people and not even people that are like political adversaries, but just like I'm looking at some of the reviews for, and I just want to mention because it is like topical. I'm looking at some of the reviews for Black Panther 2, and they're like, um, Ryan Coogler wanted to replace T'Challa with a woman, and he succeeded. I'm like, what are you talking about? You really think this man was like this man whose original version of the movie, mind you, was about a father and son wanting to like only like just get like phase out all men, like what? They are nuts. And I'm still laughing at the one review that said that the first movie had too many women in it. That was hilarious. I fell out laughing. I told you the way guys online work is they'll sit here and just go hard in the paint for chicks in real life, but then they hate fictional ones. That's hilarious. Ryan Coogler wanted to get rid of men in his movie, even though the original script for his movie was a man and his son. And he had to rewrite it after the man tragically passed away. He wanted to take the men out of the movie. People get way too attached to these characters. Not only do they do that, but they're like so like uh, I mean, I watched this movie. I think it's all right. I like it, whatever. I go home, I watch a review, and I'm being told about how um the film is trying to do push this agenda and that agenda, and I'm like, what are you talking about? Like I'm just sick of hearing that stuff, man, because they're not telling you what's good about the story, what's bad about the story. It's this is an allegory for women being stronger than men. Every man in this film is a joke. It's like the main villain is a damn man who literally almost wins in the finale. So what do you I told you, man, like these people drive me nuts. They really think that every film that comes out has some producer in the background scheming on how they're eventually gonna make men look bad and get rid of guys. And yeah, every time I watch something that comes out now, they say that. And you know why it doesn't work here, and like why it's even more blatant? Because what they said the same thing when the first Black Panther came out. They were like, "This movie is SJW, and it's about a bunch of women and a guy and his cousin." They said the same thing about the first film, and now because there's like what one less male character, they're saying it about the second one as well. God, even though, like I said, you actually pick up some comics, like even the modern ones, right? It's a man's world. Go look at the current running Marvel and DC titles and see how many women are like the lead of books. It's probably like 6 or 7 altogether. But if they do a movie where it's mostly women, they want to sit here and act like women have taken over it's so stupid, man. But that's why I said that like I don't have a problem with different opinions, but if we start getting caught up in this weird stuff about what the message of this film is and like how they're trying to push this agenda, like I don't care. I don't. If it's so agenda driven, then don't watch it. But of course they won't do that because they got to make their outrage money, you know. That's the dirty little secret to those channels. They'll never stop because you know it used to be that if something wasn't good, you would just stop watching or reading it. But we've actually entered something of a paradox where because these people make their living off of trashing um people's work, they're going to keep watching those things that they say are not good, and giving, and getting money off of something that in turn makes money. So it's all like a false, like a pseudo adversarial relationship where it's like you'll say my movie's not good, but you'll still go and watch every single one I come out with. And then you'll get paid for doing this too. So you're paying me to have knowledge of something that you're going to get paid for talking about. You see how like they're acting like they're resisting, but they're really not. They're going right along with it because there are coins to be made. You don't think that's crazy that we live in such a backward society that people are financially incentivized to watch things they don't like? Just like, for example, there's this new Velma show on HBO Max. I haven't watched one episode. I look at the clips of it. It looks like trash. A Scooby Doo show without Scooby is just, it's stupid to me. But there are people who are gonna, because there's some who have said, I don't want to watch this after the first two episodes, gave it a chance, whatever. There are people who are gonna watch that whole damn show and make episode to episode reviews. Each one comes out, hey guys, look at how stupid this show got this. And you're like, you're not doing this because you want to see if it improves. You're not doing this because you have a genuine belief that it will get better or that something will like happen that's interesting here. Like this show, you knew you didn't like it from the second it came out, and then you're gonna like still watch it anyway and give them more viewership. But again, the reason they're doing that isn't because they're on some righteous crusade to show you how bad this thing is and to like warn you, stay away. No, because they're going to make money off of putting up videos or reviews of this show that they say they don't like, but it'll get a bunch of views from the outrage culture, and then they'll get their coins for talking about something that's more well known than they are. It really is a nice little pyramid scheme. Every time there's something that they say they don't like, they magically manifest and go see it. I'm so tired of hearing that those three stupid letters together. You know, they did that with Dragon Ball because you brought up earlier. They did that too, where like in the moral arc, there's like these three female minions that can merge together, and they were given some trouble to I think to Roshi and Krillin because they're like they power up from fusing, right? And somebody was like, I was upset because I was mad the rest of the cast couldn't beat the minions. Like I just thought it was crazy that your actual other characters that are there to fight the minions can't beat them, so they can look at least semi-competent. And you had people who were like, they have women being able to fight male characters. This is SJW. Like, what? And they said the same thing about the Tournament of Power with Kale and Khalifa. So I don't know, man. The internet is such a weird place because these guys they love these real life chicks to where they're sitting over there and, having 20, 30, 40, 50 of them ask out some woman, but then I guess in fiction, they're like very hostile and aggressive. It's weird, man. It's people are just not consistent. It literally doesn't mean anything. They just use the word to make some they don't like sound bad. And I'm telling you, but like their reasons for not liking stuff are so superficial. And in the case of Black Panther in particular, it was even crazier because a lot of these same channels, you go back and you look at their videos from 4 years ago, they were saying the first one was SJW too. The agenda of the civilized, highly advanced Black society. It's like, well, I mean, I don't support Black people separating from the rest of the world, but I like seeing them talk and be civilized and not act crazy. I didn't know that was a woke agenda. People just acting like decent human beings. And it's just I don't know, it's just weird to me. But yeah, it does mean nothing. I'm just saying that for that particular sequel, because they did this with the first film, it made them look even goofier because we know this is just what they're saying about this series. It's just that because of the absence of the lead actor, they get to like put a new spin on it, right? So first it was oh, it's SJW because it's a bunch of black people as the main cast with their own world or whatever, their own little country. Now it's SJW because it's a bunch of women. Even though it's literally the same cast from the first movie, minus like two people, but whatever. God. Dude, imagine if I did a stream and I've got like three women in the stream, right? So it's one guy, three women. And then let's say they do a stream where I'm not there because I have to like work, or if you want to get even more tragic, maybe I'm in the hospital, whatever. They do it one where it's just the three of them, and then people are like, "This stream is SJW," and you're like, "What?" They're just doing a stream without the male that was there because he's incapacitated, and they don't want to replace him. I told you, man. Like people have lost their minds. God, they just always find a way to be against something. It's so sad. Because even though Akatsuki Merchant is writing his Wakanda script, for his Killmonger spinoff, and he's going to be showing us the ins and outs of Eric, and I may not be too much a big fan of that character. I'm not going to tell him that he shouldn't write it or that he shouldn't try to get his dream of seeing the Killmonger spinoff film adapted. If he does a good script and he puts it out there, maybe it will get picked up by Marvel. But I'm not going to tell him that he shouldn't have something, or he's trying to push an agenda just because he's making something I don't want. Dude, I really want to like I just keep thinking the joke of that purple drink, like that sweet whatever it is. It's like some kind of juice or something. Like I actually want to like see if I can find some drink that's purple and drink the drink. But yeah, you got two movies you're writing, and I encourage you to write both of them. You need to write and hone your skills and produce the Killmonger spinoff. And you need to write and hone your skills and produce Black Panther: Return of Killmonger. So we can have the Oh my god. No, it literally doesn't mean anything. I agree. But look, Akatsuki Merchant, I can see your hands are getting tired. I've been going for 2 hours now. I'll stream again on Saturday. It'll be harder because people will probably be here, but hey, streaming's always got some difficulties associated with it. But I hope we had a decent conversation about writing. There was some stuff about the goofy chicks as well. Um, and like I said, if you want to write something and you think it sounds interesting or good, just do it. Like all this stuff about agendas and messages. It's like, why can't I want works to be judged on their individual merits? Does this have a good story? Are the characters decent or interesting, or people that you support? Like, just there has to be something beyond just all this superficial crap about agendas and all. I don't know. Just I like the purity of writing from the standpoint of what you can actually accomplish with telling a cohesive story, not what can we overanalyze to the point of absurdity. So thanks for showing up. I know Sal was here earlier; he left, but I appreciate you, Akatsuki Merchant, and good luck on the Killmonger film.